Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you for being with us every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. in the series of talks that are promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation. I'm Tanya Schwartz, and I'm here today to present our special guest, JOÃO KORNGOLD, that will be talking to us about free will. Hi, JOÃO.
Hi.
And before we listen to this talk, we're going to start with our initial prayer, as usual, to prepare the ambience for us and to be ready to listen to JOÃO. So we close our eyes in order to concentrate, elevate our thoughts, asking our spiritual friends for the inspiration, to also thank them for this morning, for this opportunity of being here together, and ask for their help in order to open our minds, our hearts, our thoughts, to really understand the lessons and apply in our lives to help us in our inner transformation. Thank you. Please be with us, and so be it. So, JOÃO, before you can bring your lessons to us, I'm going to introduce you formally. JOÃO KORNGOLD is one of the founders and directors of the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. He began studying Spiritism more than 25 years ago and has been one of the directors of the mediumship meeting at SGNY for the past 18 years. He's also responsible for study groups that focus on the basic books of Spiritism and on the André Luiz collection. He gives talks on Spiritism in Portuguese and in English. JOÃO KORNGOLD is an engineer and works as a banker. So welcome, JOÃO, and nice having you here today to bring these words to us.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you all. Thank you, the United States Spiritist Federation, for the invitation. I also want to extend my thank you to Daniel Santos that have been with me in the background of this series since the beginning. We've been doing this for probably some 45 weeks now, and we are always in the background, and so I thank Daniel also to be together in this work with us. You know, when I decided to talk about free will, I was thinking of covering a subject that is very difficult to discuss and very controversial there outside Spiritism. And in Spiritism, it's not controversial, but brings a lot of questions and a lot of doubts. We want to start with Einstein. Why with Einstein? Because Albert Einstein is the most well-known scientist of our times. Albert Einstein, in a letter to Max Braun, said that God does not play dice with the universe. What did he mean by that? Well, first, we have to understand that contrary to what many scientists say and would like to believe, Einstein believed in God and gave a great importance to God in his works. It's from Einstein, the famous phrase that religious without science is blind, science without religion is lame. And that's an article he wrote, Science and Religion. So when he wrote about this phrase in this letter, God does not play dice with the universe, he wrote this letter to one of the fathers of quantum physics, quantum mechanics in the 1920s. And for those that know better quantum physics and quantum mechanics, and I don't, there is a high degree of uncertainty in quantum physics. And Einstein questioned it in the sense that he thought that God could not allow things to be uncertain, that everything, that the creation was perfect, so the creation had to be, in a sense, deterministic. Now, we know that according to Spiritism, and we are going to see that, free will is an important part of what the spirit, the evolving spirit, utilizes on our evolution. Without it, it will be very difficult to understand a lot of things in our evolutionary path. So when we talk about free will, let's go to a famous phrase from Mark Twain. Mark Twain said, "I have a higher and grander standard of principle than George Washington. He could lie. I can, but I won't." What did he mean by that? It's very interesting, this passage by George Washington. When he was 6 years old, he received an axe as a present, and he went there and cut a tree, a cherry blossom tree, from his father. And then his father was angry at him and asked him if it was him that cut the tree, and he said, "I cannot lie, it was me." And his father was very proud of him and said, "I prefer that you do not lie, then and I forgive you." Actually, this is not a true story. This is when a biographer, when George Washington died and a biographer wanted to write a story, he wanted to create some nice sayings about George Washington to make him look better than for the public. And it was a huge success in the beginning of the 19th century, this biography of George Washington, but the story is not really true. Anyway, it became famous. It's used until today. But what Mark Twain is saying here is that he has the choice of lying or not lying, and he chooses not to. So this is the basics of free will. Actually, he said this phrase when he was talking in a public speech, and he specifically was explaining why he wouldn't want he would no longer want to be a reporter. He said, "Reporters have to lie. It's part of their profession. I can lie, but I won't, so I decide not to be a reporter." Okay, so let's talk about free will. What is free will? So it's this very hot day in the summer, the opposite of what it is today in New York, where we have -10 in Celsius or 20s, low 20s. You are passing through an ice cream parlor, and you see 10 new flavors and special of the day, and then you say, "I want a double fudge chocolate, please." So choosing the flavor that you want, is this free will? No. This is simply the exercise of a preference. You are making a choice. That is not free will in the sense that we want to discuss it here. So going to the Webster Dictionary, the definition of free will is the freedom of humans to make choices that are not determined by prior causes or by divine intervention. And the divine intervention is very important here, and we are going to talk about it. Voluntary choice or decision. So it's a decision based on our own choices. We don't have any prior causes, or it's not imposed on us. It's our choice. So free will refers to the type of decision that's uniquely human, a moral choice. Why uniquely human? Because when we talk about animals, and I know a lot of people are going to say, well, but a dog can choose when they want to eat. They eat when they are hungry. Well, this is not really free will. This is instinct. Now, this is the basic principles that will eventually become free will when we become individual spirits in our continuous evolution? Yes, because free will is not something that is given as a present to us. It's something that we develop from our creation. But when we talk about decisions made by animals, even the most the more evolved animals like the cats and the dogs, they are making their decisions based on instincts. It's not really free will. When we talk about free will, we are talking about moral choices that will have consequences. And so when we talk about preferences, the consequences are not moral consequences. If you are going to eat a chocolate or a vanilla ice cream, is an ice cream. It's a preference. But when you are choosing between two paths, then that will have moral consequences for you and for those around you. That's when free will comes into place. So free will is the faculty that each person has to determine one's own behavior. Is the possibility that one has between two or more sufficient reasons for wanting or acting to choose one of them. So going to the Spirit's book, and I'm giving you a preview of the new cover of the Spirit's book that the United States Spiritist Federation will start using very shortly. Kardec asks the Spirits on question 843, do humans have free will in their actions? And the answers from the Spirits is clear and direct. Since they have freedom of thought, they also have freedom of action. Without free will, they would be nothing more than machines. So, in Spiritism, according to the teachings of the Spirits, it is clear that we have free will. And one thing that I find it very interesting when I was researching for this this talk, do you know that 90% of Americans believe in God? But less than 90% of Americans believe in free will. It's around, according to different research, is around 80 or sometimes less than 80% of Americans believe in free will. So what do they believe? In determinism, that everything is determined, that everything is written, or let's say written in the stars, or predetermined. So determinism goes against what the Spirits tell us. So if you are a Spiritist, you know that we have free will, that without free will, we'll be nothing more than machines. But we have to put God into this equation, and we are going to talk about God and free will a little bit later. But it's not only in Spiritism. One of the basics of the Jewish belief, it is free will. Without free will, the Jewish teachings would lose a lot of meanings. The teachings from the prophets, Maimonides talks about free will, the importance of free will in the Jewish belief. And we find this phrase from the Rabbi Noah Weinberg, which is very beautiful. Within these divine sparks lies our potential to shape and change the world. Proper use of free will beautifies and perfects. Misuse of free will plunders and destroys. So free will is an integral part of the human being in almost all religions, of course, with different views on it and different beliefs. But as we see, the majority of us believes and understands free will. But we want to talk about free will more in the sense of Spiritism. And continuing, it is a uniquely human undertaking to learn how to use free will properly. And that's a little bit of what we want to discuss today. So free will and human behavior. A belief in free will is important for human strivings. People cherish their sense of control over the world and their own behavior. So we have these two articles published by Kathleen Voss and Roy Baumeister that they did a very interesting experience on observation on how people react with the idea of having free will or not having free will. So they did a study with a group of people, telling them, presenting them a paper that, in a sense, proved that free will did not exist, and into another group proving that free will exists. And after they read this paper, they were given an experience with an opportunity to cheat on the experience they were doing, meaning they would have a reward in the end of experience, and they had the possibility of cheating. And they found out that amongst those that believe in free will, the number of people cheating was much, much smaller than in the group that did not believe in free will, that believed that everything was predetermined. So free will, what this proves? This proves that free will is an important concept and understanding for human beings, for our evolution, that if we believe in free will, we tend to behave better than our fellow beings that do not believe in free will. It's an interesting study, and you can find it on the internet. So Roy Baumeister and Kathleen Diane Voss, these were studies made by in 2008, 2009, around that. So as we evolve, we have choices. As we progress with our free will, we can make choices and we have responsibility. So the choices that we choose will have consequences. So if we accuse someone and we have a confrontation, the consequences are retaliation and separation. On the other side, if we have understanding and forgiveness, eventually we will achieve reconciliation, restoration, and patience. So these are choices we make based on our free will, and that will create consequences for us. So the most important psychologist that we have nowadays for spiritists is, of course, Joana de Angelis. In the book, The Integral Human Being, she talks about our choices and our free will. And I think it's important to bring what she says, because it adds to our understanding of our choices, of our understanding of our free will. She says, the most significant moment of the human evolutionary process happened when human beings acquired conscience, which enabled them to distinguish between good and evil, truth from pretense, right from wrong, therefore allowing them to continue in their ascending march towards the plenitude of the angelic state. So he's telling us that when we acquired conscience and we acquired or started to develop free will, we started to distinguish between good and evil. And by choosing between good and evil, we created consequences from us. She continues, we speak of freedom of being and acting, of having one's values respected, as well as having options towards discernment and implementation of those same values, always under the aegis of ethical and social codes. Again, the importance of freedom of being and acting, this is the basis of free will. But respecting our own values and choosing how we are going to implement those values that we have. She continues, society, which speaks for the successful members, establishes that freedom is the right each one has of doing what one desires, without realizing that such emancipation of will precludes the rights of others and eventually foments the individual clashes of those who feel constrained, erupting into violence within groups and classes whose rights are dilapidated. So this is the basics of what we see in society nowadays. By choosing, making our own choices, by using our free will, without respecting those around us, without respecting society, we create consequences. And I think the moment we are living in the world and in this country tell us a lot about the use of free will and the misuse of free will according to our beliefs and lack of respect for the beliefs of those around us. So we are having these clashes of those who feel constrained, and we are having violence. That is a consequence of utilizing our free will without taking into consideration society as a whole and the free will and rights of others. So freedom is a right that is consolidated to the direct extent that human beings exercise self-discovery and become self-aware, whereupon they are capable of identify their own values, which they must employ in an edifying manner, respecting nature and everything that exists in it. So when we are making our choices, freedom is our right that we have, but we have to understand the environment, we have to respect those around us, nature, and all individuals. So this is from the book, The Integral Human Being, by Joana de Angelis, through the psychography of Divaldo Pereira Franco. So going back to the Spirit's book and to Allan Kardec, and that's where Spiritism brings something that the more you study the concepts and discussions of free will outside Spiritism, you see what's lacking in that discussions, which is the concept of us being eternal beings, us living eternally. So what is happening nowadays to us in this existence is, of course, a consequence of choices and that we made in our previous existences and in our life in the spiritual world. So in question 258 of the Spirit's book, Kardec asks the spirits, when they are in an errant state and before they assume a new physical existence, do spirits see what will happen in that new existence? And the spirits answer, they choose the type of trials that they will experience, and free will exists in this freedom of choice. So we see actually a lot of spirits that when we have our mediumship meetings, spirits, rebel spirits that come, and we are trying to dialogue with them. We have conversations and discussions and trying to calm themselves. Sometimes they come and they are restricted in their freedom to speak and to move because that's the way they need to be in order for us to have a constructive conversation. And one of their favorite phrases is, "Where is my free will? You are restricting my free will. You talk about free will, but you are not allowing me to have free will here." Now, free will, it's in our choices, but the consequences of our choices are determined by the divine law. So in our existence, as the spirits say here, we choose the type of trials that we will experience, and there is our free will, this freedom of choice. But once the choice is made, these choices will create consequences, and these consequences, we cannot avoid them. So there is always free will, but there is always consequences. So when we talk about reincarnation and free will, and that's where Spiritism really makes a difference compared to the other discussions around free will outside Spiritism. Free will is exercised at the hour of the incarnation. When we choose a family, we choose the environment, the Spirit knows in advance what waits for it. So the Spirit understands the necessity of these trials, the consequences where we have to be incarnated, the family that we have to face in order to develop our qualities, eliminate its imperfections, and to disintegrate its prejudices and vices. So we make these choices if we can, and that something is very important here, that when we talk about compulsory reincarnations, the spirit does not have the conditions to participate in its reincarnation planning. And a lot of people ask in discussions that we have, well, how much the spirit participates or does not participate in the reincarnation planning. Well, for you to participate in your reincarnation planning, first you have to believe in reincarnation, right? Because there is a lot of spirits that go back to the spiritual world and stay there without understanding or accepting reincarnation. So of course, if they don't understand or accept, they cannot be part of their reincarnation planning. And spirits who refuse to reincarnate for some time, they are going to be allowed to refuse to reincarnate. Yes, for a certain time, again, free will, but reincarnation is compulsory. Reincarnation is part of divine law, so we will have to reincarnate. And so our protecting spirits, our guardian angel, and our familiar spirits will make the choices for us, like we make choices for children, young children that cannot make their own choices. You don't ask a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, if they want to go to school or not. And if they say no, we don't take them to school. We make them go to school because they don't have the maturity to understand the need to learn and to go to school. The same thing with us as non-evolved spirits in need of a new reincarnation. The choices are made for us, but all these choices are consequences of our own previous actions. So when we talk about determinism and fatalism, Kardec also asks the spirits, does fatalism control the events of life in the sense commonly attached to this world, in every event of our lives predestined? And if so, what becomes of free will? This is question 851. And Kardec the spirits answer, fatalism only exists based on the choice each spirit makes to undergo a trial. By choosing the trial, you create a sort of destiny for yourself. This is only with respect of physical trials, because in moral trials and temptations, a spirit always maintains a freedom of choice between good and evil and is always able to yield or resist. And that's very important, the difference between moral trials and physical trials. Wherever we face in our incarnations that is of physical consequences, so some of the diseases, some of the imperfections that we have in our physical bodies, these are trials or expiations that we chose or are chosen for ourselves. But our moral trials, our moral choices, we always have the freedom to choose between good and evil, and we are always able to yield or to resist. So there is no fatalism or determinism in the moral choices that we make. There are many things that are predetermined for our physical existences that we have to go through because they serve for us to evolve and to become better individuals. So the seeming fatalism, which is forever placing obstructions on our path, is in reality an inevitable outcome of our past errors. Spirits are always capable of choosing their own path, and their choices will determine what they will undergo through their present life and future incarnations. What we may consider now a misfortune in our life is actually an opportunity to progress. We are the ones that establish our own fate, so to say. So the power to make our lives better is in our own hands. As the famous phrase says, sowing is free, harvesting is compulsory. So we make our own choices, but by making our own choices and using our free will, we'll face the consequences. There is no way to avoid the consequences of our own choices. So, free will, we can choose our path. So our moral choices that will create bad consequences are choices made in hate, in anger, in pride, in arrogance. The good choices, when we are imbued with love, with peace, with kindness, of humility, self-control. God leaves to each one of us the decision of what direction to take, but then we earn the fruits of every choice we make, the good and the bad consequences. By making use of our free will, we establish our own destiny and prepares the way of our own future, sorrow or happiness. It's very simple. We have the ability to make the moral choices. And according to our choices, there will be consequences. It's, we talk about how complicated is free will and how difficult it is. It is just that simple. Making good choices or bad choices. Thinking before we make the choices. Emmanuel, in the book Nascer y Renacer, which is not translated into English, unfortunately, to be born and reborn, he says that before returning to the physical world, our soul begs the Lord to grant us an opportunity to work for our own readjustment. So we are heirs to our own past. And in this context, we draft our own destiny. But since we are temporarily magnetized to the vehicle of flesh, our physical body, we embrace once again our own tendencies and we flee from our honorable duties. So we know what we are supposed to do, but we postpone, procrastinate, refuse to do what we know we are supposed to do. And that makes use of our own free will. Leon Denis, in the book After Death, tells us that by making use of its own free will, the soul settles its own destiny and prepares its sorrow or happiness, but never, be it in the full tide of progress, in the bitter hour of trial, or in the midst of a passionate struggle against evil, will the help that descends from on high be refused to it. Let the soul remain true to itself, no matter how unworthy it may appear, because as soon as it manifests an intention to regain the straight and blessed road, then will Providence send assistance and support to it. And it is another thing that we see a lot of questions. Where is God when I'm struggling? Where is God when I need most help? And when we go to André Luiz in the book Nosso Lar, when he asks, where were the spirits in the 8 years, the assisting spirits in the 80 years that he was there suffering in the lower zones? And spirits tell him, the assistance is always there. We need to allow ourselves to be assisted, to be helped. We need to make the connection to the spiritual world to allow this help and this assistance to come to us. But normally we are too proud, too selfish to admit that we need help. So we do not allow the assistance that comes from the superior spirits, from Providence, as Leon Denis states here, to help and assist us. Our protecting spirits, our guardian angels, they are always ready to help and assist us, but they are not going to force or impose on us the assistance we don't want to receive. So going back to the spirit's world, to the spirit's book and free will and good and evil, on question 121, Kardec asked the spirits, how is that some spirits have traveled the road of the righteous and others the road of evil? Again, why some spirits make the good choices, and other spirits make bad choices? And Kardec and the spirits answer clearly, do they not have free will? God has not created bad spirits. They were all created simple and unaware, possessing an equal aptitude for good or bad. Those who become bad become so of their own volition. Here, the concept of free will apply really to our evolutionary path. We were all created simple and ignorant. We have all received the seeds and the conditions to evolve according to our own choices, our own beliefs. Free will, it's not a gift, as I said before. It's something that we develop. Of course, when we are primitive spirits, our free will just coming out of being an intelligent principle, we basically have instincts, and we start developing our free will by making very basic choices, very primitive choices, creating very simple consequences. The consequences of choices we make without knowing what is good and what is bad does not create karma. What creates karma is when we know what we are doing and we make the wrong choice. We make the choice of evil. So our evolutionary path is making mistakes, learning from our mistakes. If we make mistakes out of lack of knowledge, we don't create consequences. We create consequences when we make mistakes knowing what we are doing. That's where it comes. The more you know, the more responsible you are. As Jesus says, to those who know more, more will be given. To those who know less, even what they have will be taken away. What Jesus meant was, the more you know, the more responsible you are. The more responsible you are and the more you make good choices, the more you will receive help and assistance from the spiritual world, and the more you will be able to progress. The less you know and the less effort you make, the less you have the ability to receive the assistance, not because the assistance is not there, but because you refuse to listen. You refuse to open yourself to the assistance that comes from the spiritual world. So that's very important also, that that Spiritism brings to us, that is different from what you see out there. Good and evil are not genetically predetermined. It's the exercise of our own choices. It is not in the physical body, good and evil. It's in the spirit. The spirit is not the physical body. The physical body belongs to the spirit. So that's where we have those phrases, you see the gentle giants, that big people that are very big, very strong, but they're very gentle, very kind. And sometimes you have people that are very small and weak, but very aggressive and angry and very difficult to deal with, because it's all in the spirit. It's not the physical body. So how can we exercise free will and use free will to improve ourselves? Let us talk about some levels of how we can use free will to improve, to evolve. Level 1, self-awareness. Become aware of the choices you are making. Think. Life is a constant stream of decisions. Once you become sensitive to the fact that you are constantly making choices, you can then monitor them. That's using your free will actively, not passively. Do not use your free will as a reaction to the external world. Use your free will as a conscious action of knowing what you are doing and knowing what consequences it will bring to you. So that's the self-awareness. Be your own person, and that's very important to what we are facing nowadays. Don't accept society's beliefs as your own unless you thought them through and agree with them. Live for yourself, not for society. Check your assumptions and make sure that they are really yours and not someone else's. So make choices based on what you believe is truth, based on what you think is the right path, not because society is imposing or your own group is what they tell you it's right or wrong. As Kardec said, it's better to refuse, reject untruths than to accept one lie. And for me, as I mentioned many times, it took me a long time to understand that. But the reality is the truth is out there and will come eventually. If you cannot accept it now, it will stay there and will come, because truths are eternal. But the damage that accepting one lie can do to you and to those around you and even to society, it can be very difficult to deal with it later. So be your own person. Level 3, distinguish between body and soul. That's what we just said. Within each one of us, there is a fierce battle constantly between the cravings of our body and the aspirations of our soul. What our body asks us to do is not necessarily what we should do. Don't be ambushed by your body. Identify whether it's your body or your soul talking. When you have impulses that you know are physical impulses, we need to learn how to control them and to use them in our favor and not subject ourselves to our impulses. Identify with our souls, not with our bodies. So achieve mastery over your body by identify with your soul. The righteous talk to their bodily desires, while evil people let their desires talk to them. So the big question is, who's running the show? Who will dictate what you are going to do? The only way to attain inner peace is to get the body to desire what the soul wants, is to find the balance between the soul and the body. So that's when we become better spirits. And finally, make your will God's will. The highest stage of free will is not when you ask yourself, what does my soul want? It's when you ask yourself, what does God want? When that is your prime interest, you have achieved the highest form of living. You are using your free will to merge with the most meaningful and powerful force of the universe, the transcendental. When Paul says that I'm here to do God's will, not my will, what I want is not important. What God wants is what's important. This is when you achieve a true connection with the divinity, and you act in the name of the divinity, and your actions are for the benefit of those around you and the benefit of humankind as a whole. Going back to the integral human being, Joanna de Angelis tells us, in examining the noble problem of freedom, Jesus summarized the means through which to obtain it. That is, the pursuit of truth, the only option that can transform human beings in truly free individuals. We have to incessantly look for truth, using our reason. Spiritism tells us, true faith is the one that can use reason on a daily basis. We have to reason. We have to search for the truth, but we are only going to achieve it when we connect with the divinity. And then Joanna continues, free is the spirit that controls and conquers itself, moving everywhere with wisdom, idealism, and kindness, as it overcomes all the pressing and niggardly injunctions. This is the true freedom, the spirit that controls and conquers itself, because then it evolves with wisdom, with kindness, and with idealism. So true freedom is implanted deeply into the conscience and must be sought by delving into into its innermost core, and through long contemplation with foment self-knowledge. Only with self-knowledge, only with the fully understanding of who we are, of our actions, is when we are going to achieve the true inner self that is an evolved spirit that is fully using its free will on its most evolved idea to learn and to progress. Despite of the difficulties you may face, you intimately are free to improve or worsen your own situation. You are the artisan of your own life. And I think this picture shows us we are building our road. And what we are living in the past is what it builds for the future. What we are going to achieve is what we are constructing for ourselves, based on our choices and our options. We finish with Voltaire, which is, I think it's very important nowadays when we face so many challenges, we face so many differences of opinions. Voltaire said this famous phrase, which is actually questioned. Some people say that he didn't really say that, but it's there is a lot of information that says that it really comes from us, and it's a beautiful phrase. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. This is true freedom, to respect others, to respect the opinions of others, but to make our own choices based on our own opinions, based on our own beliefs, and thinking of those around us, thinking of society around us, to the benefit of all those around us. That's the fundamental choice that we have with our free will. So you ever wonder if God had any second thoughts when he gave free will to us? This is how I would like to finish our conversation here today. Okay, I thank you for this opportunity, and I believe that we may have some questions there. Right, Tanya?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's true. Free will seems to be a great thing, but with responsibility. And we see a lot of people not understand what freedom is, right? Including ourselves, of course, always including. It's important to really understand what we're doing and make the right choices. And sometimes it's so hard to make the choice that is according to God's laws, right? Sometimes we feel like, yeah, I'd like to do this or that, and I shouldn't, and then we have the decision to make. So that's the key point, right? Where what we really want and what we should choose, those sometimes are not the same. Right. So thank you so much, João. It was just kept me thinking about all this. It's a good food for thought.
Yes.
Let's go to the questions now. Kirsten is asking us, I've always had the issue of the chicken or the egg. I mean, we have free will, but then there's God's plans for us, and we will endure and experience what we need to. So it always makes me wonder, how much control do we really have?
Yes, thanks, Kirsten. Yes, it's a good question. It's a question we always have, right? How we balance God's natural law, which was created, and it's perfect, so we cannot go against it. We cannot infringe God's law because it's perfect, and the opportunity of free will. Well, we go back to our creation as being simple and ignorant, and achieving this free will, developing this free will. The free will is for us to evolve and making our choices. But where God comes into it is when this free will goes against God's law. So that's when we create consequences for our actions. So we have free will in the choices we make, but we don't have free will on the consequences, because the consequences are God's law. So the consequences are based on the choices we make. You know, if you decide to bang your head against the wall, you know, you're free to do it, but the consequences are going to be a headache, an injury. You cannot avoid these consequences if you're heading your head, banging your head against the wall. So this is as simple as I can put in terms of our free will to make the choices and the consequences, which are the natural laws, God's law, meaning whatever we choose to make on our actions, we have free will, but their consequences, they are based on God's law, on the natural laws.
Yeah, that's what we don't like to deal with, but that's what it is. Very well put. Let's see if we have more questions. Okay, is free will always related to a moral behavior?
Moral choices are, we always have free will to make our moral choices, yes, but free will, it applies to everything that we choose. So when we make choices in our physical life, again, the moral choices are in our free will, but we cannot say that is always related to moral behavior, because there is always we can raise the concept here of ethical, right? The difference between ethical and moral. And according to society, moral those are choices that relates to ourselves and to society. And ethical behavior are choices that are only for ourselves, our individual choices according to our own beliefs, according to our own thoughts. It does not relate to society. So when you are making ethical choices, you can say that they may be different from moral choices according to society, but it's your own beliefs. So it's a whole different lecture when you are going to discuss the discussions between ethical and moral. But you have to expand a little bit. It's free will relates also to ethical choices, which sometimes are not moral choices.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So let's see if we have more. Oh, yes. Ana Elena Lopes. Would lacking of knowledge or intention plays a role on our moral choices?
Yes, it does. Because you can only make choices based on the knowledge you have. If you don't know the difference between good and evil, and in the very beginning of our evolutionary path, when we were primitive spirits, we don't know the difference between good and evil. We are just learning. So when a caveman kills the neighbor caveman as they are fighting for who gets the food, so as a way to survive, there are no really consequences for that. The other caveman that was killed, it's not going to get angry. It doesn't really understand the concept. So it doesn't create obsessors. It doesn't create enemies, because we know very little. So there is not much of a consequence. The more you know, the more consequences you have. So the lacking of knowledge or intention, yes, it does play a role in our moral choices, because the more you have knowledge and the more you know what you are doing, the more our moral choices will play the role. Again, even in human law, right? When you commit a crime, the jury will judge between if it was an impulsive act or if it was a choice. And if you make the choice knowing what you are doing, the punishment, the time in prison, let's say, is bigger than a choice made out of an impulse. So if even more human laws take into the consideration the knowledge and understanding of what you are doing, of course, the divine laws who are perfect, there is a much bigger role in knowledge and intention when we are making our moral choices.
Thank you. Yeah. Daniel Santos. Thanks, João. Do you think that free will could be an upgrade of our instinct controlled by the mind?
Yes. As we discussed, the free will, we start developing free will in the beginning of our stage as spirits, as individual spirits. We call ourselves spirits as when we become, when we enter the so-called human phase here. Before that, we are intelligent principle. And when we are intelligent principle, we have only instincts. The free will starts to develop when we are individual spirits. And yes, as we evolve more and more, we start balancing instinct with free will. Not to say that instinct is not important, and we have instinct. We always have instinct, because one of the important things that for us to evolve is to have instincts. Our evolutionary path, we need, in order to survive as human beings, we need to have instinct to defend ourselves, instinct of protecting ourselves. A lot of things that we do is instinctive still in this stage, but the more we evolve, the more we are able to reason with our choices, to make our choices based on rational behavior and rational understanding of our evolution. So it's important that as we evolve, our free will evolves, the instinct plays a smaller part on our choices and our evolutionary path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to think, João, about when we have our little kids and we're going to cross the street, right? We don't let them choose, we hold their hands. And then as they grow up, right, then we start trusting them to make those choices and cross the street by themselves with us holding their hands. So it feels a little bit like free will to us as we're beginning of our evolution up to now, kind of grows with our knowledge and responsibility. Knowing more, you are able to make, we're supposed to be able to make better choices, the right choices, right? So
I think children is a very good example of how to use free will, and the difference between using free will as us as evolutionary spirits, because at some stage of our spiritual evolution, we're really children. So we have to use more evolved spirits to make better choices for us. It's important. It doesn't go against the concept of free will. It goes with the concept of educating, like we do with our children. The education is important for us to have better choice, better ability to make choices according to our free will.
Yeah. Let's see, one more question from Glaucio Pessoa. Good morning. How can we best balance our free will against our instinctive drives?
Yeah, there are questions in the Spirit's book that says that isn't our first impulse, the instinctive impulse, is it not always the best choice? We have to learn how to balance our free will and our instincts, right? So our instinct is to when we discussed between the soul and the body, our instinct is to grab all chocolate that is around us and eat all chocolate because it's good. The body likes it, feels good. But our free will in making decisions that are better for ourselves as eternal spirits, meaning in terms of becoming better and being in better condition in terms of our physical body being better prepared for our journey, it takes into account. That's how we balance our free will and our instincts. We cannot allow our instincts dictate our choices. We have to listen to them, to respect them, to use them whenever they are important to us, to our path of evolution, but we cannot yield to our inferior basic instincts when we know better and we can make better choices, right? You know, when people say, well, but the instinct to always protect us. Not really, right? We have the famous example of if a bear runs towards you, our instinct is to run away. And if you run away, the bear is going to grab you and kill you. The best rational option is to stay put and stay quiet, because that's the best chance of the bear not attacking you. Our instinct tells us to run.
Good point. Good point. Let's be careful. After all, if we have the reason there is a reason behind it. So let's use it, right? Definitely. Let's see. Coming from our page, from the United States Spiritist Federation page, it sounds it is wise to make choices, always having the laws of God in mind, so we can avoid bad consequences. Do we create then our own destiny in every reincarnation, changing as it goes?
Yeah, actually, we create our own destiny at every moment of our existence as eternal spirits, here and there. What the spirits tell us, the only things that that we have, the only fatalism in our incarnation is death. So we know the physical body is going to die. That's the only certainty we have in our physical life. Yeah. All the rest can be modified at every moment of our existence. All choices we are making on our everyday life are creating consequences for us. So we are using our free will at every moment of our existence as a spirit, eternal spirits, not only in incarnated, but also in the spiritual world. And we are making choices that create consequences. So yes, our present incarnation dictate future incarnations, because we are creating the positive and the negative. We tend to focus too much on the negative, but let's talk about the positive, right? All the great new acquaintances that you are having in this incarnation, that are becoming your friends for eternity in your spiritual journey. These are positive consequences of choices you are making in this incarnation. And to have good presences, good spirits around you are a blessing for future reincarnations. Of course, we are more used to talk about the negative consequences that are creating, right, with our difficulties and with our challenges. And yes, our present incarnation will dictate our future reincarnations and our behavior in the spiritual world. Let's talk about life in the spiritual world also, right? When we talk about André Luiz and his journey in the spiritual world, how much he evolved in the spiritual world. So we can evolve a lot in the spiritual world. And what is André Luiz doing in the spiritual world, or he was doing in the spiritual world in his journey in life in the spiritual world that we follow in the books, is creating a better future reincarnation for himself, because his moral and intellectual involvement in the spiritual world would allow him to come to a new opportunity of incarnation better prepared and with better conditions to face a new incarnation with much better tools in his box, let's say. So life in the spiritual world is important also, and help us also to evolve and to prepare ourselves for a future reincarnation.
Yeah. No, it's agree with you. It's important that we focus not only in the negative. We have so many positive things in our lives that will keep helping us grow, right? Including the way we go through our trials, the way we're able to overcome the challenges, right? So depending on how we go through everything in our lives, we can also get it better for later. So our present, the moment, like you said, is very important for what we are doing for ourselves for the future. So right now, taking care well of everything in our lives in a positive way, we definitely will have a better future. And future, not next life, like you said, no, it can be tomorrow, right? It's always very easy just to think about reincarnations and in far away from us, but every moment counts. So I like that positioning, very, very important. Another one, in this time of pandemic, of course, we had to have one of those. A lot of people say the ones who are supposed to die from COVID-19 will, and those who don't won't, right? Who are not supposed to die, they won't. Sounds like a determinist positioning. Some comments about that.
That's a good question. Yes. So why those people are dying from COVID and others are not? The other day I saw that a lady 110 years old had COVID and survived COVID. So why this happens? We all, as I just mentioned, we all have, our physical body will die one way or another. Our life, when we come to this life, we have a shelf life of our physical body. We don't have a predetermined time of death, but a more or less an estimate of how much we are supposed to live. And our free will makes us live more or live less according to our choices. So, you smoke your whole life, you smoke heavily, you die of lung cancer 20 years before you were supposed to die. It's your own free will, it's your own choice, you are creating consequences. So people that are dying of COVID, COVID was just an instrument for something that were supposed to happen to them. They had to die of a disease. It's not specific that they had to die for COVID. And there are reasons that they had to die from a disease. There are consequences of our previous incarnations, previous lives, and previous choices. So COVID is, like a natural catastrophe, a tsunami. All those 300,000 people that died in the tsunami, were they supposed to die of the tsunami? Is this determinism? Well, they had to die a violent death. They had to die, and they probably, and we will know that one day, they probably had a collective karma to go through. So many of those that are dying from COVID, they are probably part also of a collective karma that they have to go through. What it is, how can we judge? We cannot judge something while we are in the middle of it. We cannot evaluate the damage when we are in the middle of the hurricane. So we can talk about the Black Plague today, analyze and understand the reasons of the Black Plague in the Middle Ages that were the main reason of Renaissance and the change in the evolutionary path. But we cannot explain and understand why we are having this pandemic and why we have, as humanity, we have to go through this. Eventually, in the future, when we look back, like we do now with the Black Plague, we will understand the necessity of it and what we were doing wrong that caused humankind to have to go through the pandemic. Divaldo has a new book about it that I heard that it soon will be in English, No Rumo do Mundo de Regeneração, that some passages are already translated, and explains a little bit about the pandemic from the spiritual side. It's a very interesting book and a very interesting discussion. But the determinism is only in the sense that those that are dying from COVID, they were going to die one way or another. Maybe not now, maybe in a couple of years. But most people that die from COVID, not all, but most, they have underlying conditions. And these underlying conditions would probably cause them die from something else? Probably. Again, nothing is written in in stone. So there is a reason for all this. We will understand this reason, but not now and not soon. It has to be something that we'll have to leave for the future.
Yeah, well, we have to do our part to avoid the problem, right? That's part of our free will. If I go there and on purpose get close to somebody who has COVID, and I'm doing that, so I said, well, if I am supposed to die, I'll die, and I put myself into that situation, that's a little bit of a different story, right, João? We don't need much luck, I guess.
Yeah, but that's what those that believe in determinism, right? So if I'm not supposed to die, let me jump here from the 35th floor that I live, and I'm not going to die. That's not going to happen.
No. That's exactly right. I mean, why we don't do that and think that we can expose ourselves, into that situation and leave that in hands of God, right? We need to be aware of what we are doing. We have our own responsibility, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we have more questions. Let's see one more. We have the free will also in choosing to believe or not believe in God and having faith. How can we be helped when we choose not to believe in God?
Well, believing or not believing in God is free will, right? So you are using your free will to make a choice. The choice should be made on reason, and I'm not sure if all those that make the choice of not believing, because not believing in God is a choice. Believing in God is nature, second nature to all of us. If you look deep and try to understand, we all have the instinct believe in the Creator, because the Creator is inside all of us and we are part of the creation. So to not believe in God is a reason choice, a choice based on reason and on free will. Now, the fact that you choose not to believe in God does not prevent God from existing, and does not prevent from the spiritual world to exist and to provide you assistance, as long as you're making good choices and open yourself to receive the assistance. And the opening yourself to receive assistance doesn't even have to be a conscious opening yourself. It just means whenever you're acting to the benefit of others, consciously or unconsciously, you are opening yourself to the assistance of the evolved spirits. Choices we make based on our free will, even if we negate the existence of God and negate the spiritual world in itself, does not prevent us from being helped by God and by the spiritual world. If we are making the good choices, we are making the right choices. And I even admire more people that live according to good moral standards and still do not believe in God and still do not believe in us as eternal spirits. Because when you believe that there is nothing out there and there is only this life, it's much easier for you to make a lot of mistakes. For those that are making good choices and not believing anything, they have to be, they are evolved spirits. They just need something, a click to believe in God, and it won't be long.
Yeah, God is there. He just admit it, right? I mean,
yeah, they're not seeing it yet.
That's right. That's right. But it's a mercy of God is so special, right? When you think all the help, all the opportunities and everything, despite our pride and some of us not really trying to connect, they're still there, waiting patiently and doing whatever they can to help us. It's unbelievable, right? What is there for us? I think we have time for one more question. And before we close, Yeah, let's see. Knowing more gives us the power of good decisions, making good decisions. Is it why in Spiritism we are motivated to study God's laws and about spirituality in general?
Well, Spiritism asks us, gives us the tools to evolve morally and intellectually. To make better decisions using reason, you need to know. Without knowing, you are not going to be able to make good decisions. And there are two steps to educate ourselves, and Alicia spoke about it last week, right? This beautiful lecture that she gave. Learn the difference between learning and educating. Spiritism teaches us the first part, it's learning, right? We learn from the spirits. Now, the second stage is to educate ourselves, is when it becomes part of who we are. And when it becomes part of who we are, is when we become better spirits. So the important thing that Spiritism gives us is the tools to become better spirits. It's not to believe in anything, is not imposing anything on us. Spiritism does not impose anything, does not force us to believe in anything. Spiritism gives us the tools for us to reason, and based on reason, to reach conclusions that will make us better spirits and will help us evolve morally and intellectually. So Spiritism asks a lot of us, yes, but also gives us a lot in return. And that's why we are all here, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be.
That's right. That's right. And for that matter, now we can invite everybody to go take a look at the bookstores from the New York, and also from the Federation, from Feb Publisher, and there are so many publishers that will have books in English that can, in Spiritism, that we can go and learn, study together, plus all the talks and all the study groups and the centers. So there are so many ways that we can learn from, like you said, and then apply that in our lives. Obviously, just study, and not really use it. It's not a good service for our own selves and our spiritual growth, right? So we have the tools. Let's use them always. And thank you so much, João, for this talk and all the reminders and all these lessons that we will take and hopefully use for our own benefits and the benefit of the world, because each one of us getting better spirit, better planet, and fewer problems, fewer trials to go through. So let's take care of the world ourselves, right? People are thanking you, and from many places, the opportunity that we have now and being live and having so many people throughout the world talking to us, listening to these teachings, it's enormous, it's wonderful. So including, your lovely wife there, she's listening, of course. Very good. So before I ask you to do our final prayer, if I may, I would like to say to everyone, to invite everyone for next week's talk. That will be February 6th, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll have Angie Stewart from Florida talking about our differences make us stronger. So we invite everyone to keep joining us in the series of talks, always bringing a lot of lessons. And now I'm going to ask you, João, would you close for us with a final prayer?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And we keep our thoughts elevated. We thank the spiritual benefactors for this wonderful opportunity of being together today, from learning the teachings of our spiritual benefactors, the teachings of our Master Jesus. We ask them to help us to be able to put in practice on our daily lives everything we have learned. We ask them to continue guiding and inspiring us, that they may continue assisting the Spiritist movement in the world, especially in this country, the United States Spiritist Federation. We ask for special blessing and protection for all those affected by this pandemic, for all those struggling with the loss of loved ones, with difficulties in their financial situation, in their mental situation, that they may all find faith, understanding, resignation, and acceptance to overcome this challenge. We thank our Master Jesus for once again serving as a model, for illuminating our path, for giving us the opportunity of learning, of progressing. We ask for the protection throughout the week, that we can all continue to work, vibrate together, and that we can all be back here next week for another lesson, another learning, another talk. So be it.
So be it. Thank you.